Here is a parable, then a commentary. Now a child was holding in her hand a map. She looked closely at the map and moved her finger across it. The map showed some paths that went through a big forest park. The paths on the map sometimes crossed. The child hit the map against her hand. And then, in a big forest park, in the middle of a path, she threw the map down on the ground. As she stood, she began to cry. Soon a blind man and his dog found her right here. He asked her if she was hurt. She stopped crying and said no. Then he asked her if she liked dogs. She said yes, and came closer to pet his dog. Before she got to the dog, the blind man told her to wait. The man also said that there is a certain way of doing things that works. Then he said something to the dog quickly, and then he told the child to make a fist and to hold it still in front of her for the dog to smell. She did. The dog walked near to her, smelled briefly, then licked her wrist. The man said that the dog was ready for her to pet now. So she pet the dog for a while. Then she looked at the man and said that her map must be wrong. He slowly repeated what she said, and then asked if she was sure that it is really a map. She said yes. Then he asked how she was sure that the map was wrong. She told him that she could not be lost, so her map must be wrong. Next he asked her if she was sure that this map was a map of this park. She said yes, and offered to show it to him. Then he asked her first to tell him where she was going. She did. Next he asked her to show that place to him on the map. She did. Then he asked her to show him their current position on the map. She did. He said, "Aha, can you see the problem here?" She said, "Yes, like I already told you, that map is wrong." Then he turned his head to the left and turned it to the right as he said to her, "When you look around here, do you see anything in this part of the forest that looks like that place on the map?" She said, "No, and that's the problem." He said, "Well, I don't see a match between this part of the forest and that place on the map. So are you absolutely sure that this map is a map of this forest?" She rolled her eyes and then nodded her head. He turned the map upside down and said, "Okay then, how about this? Are you absolutely sure that this place on the map is where we are in this forest?" "I already told you that I am not lost," she said. "Oh, clearly I can see that," he said, then asked, "I wonder, have you heard about a blind man that often walks through this park?" She said, "Oh yes, I heard that the park is named after him, right?" "Yes, that's exactly the man I mean," he said. Anyway, once he was walking through this park when he suddenly realized that he had been lost since before he knew that he was lost. Can you imagine that? She said, "Well, that does not make any sense. Why didn't he just use a map?" "That is a really good question," he said. "If you ever find the answer, be sure to let me know. Anyway, didn't you say that you were going back to the entrance of the park?" "That's right," she said. Then she reached out her hands, fingers outstretched this time, for the dog to lick. "Well, fortunately for me, that is also where I am going, so we could go together," he said. "Fortunately for you, I already know how to get there from here. Follow me." Then the blind man with his dog and the child all walked directly to the entrance of the park. She told him all about the right way to make maps. And he always found a way to find every moment fascinating right now. Here's a brief summary of this story, and then a commentary will be on a separate link after this one. The summary. If a map stops working for you, stop using it. Do not rely on a map. Always rely on the ground, even if you use a map. Sometimes maps are no longer accurate. By the way, an accurate map is most effective when you know the place on the map that corresponds to your actual